Hello, everyone. This is FIDE Master Viktor Neustroev, and welcome to my 83rd webinar, where we are going to talk about typical middle game positions. Please let me know if the sound and video quality is good. Sorry about the delay. I had some technical problems. Now I solved it successfully, so everything should be fine. So guys, could you please tell me if you attend this webinar for the first time, and then introduce yourself just a little bit. For example, which country are you from, and what's your feeder, USCF or just chess.com ELO? So I have some good news and of course some bad news for you. First of all, I was muted on chess.com, so my account was temporarily banned because of too many webinar announcements. They consider it to be a spam. No, actually, not chess.com considered it, but the chess players who are subscribed, who are my subscribers or who are subscribers of my educational group, they just marked it as a spam, and that's why I am prohibited to send new webinar announcement. So that's why there will be no announcement on chess.com. Next time, please double check your emails. All the announcement will be sent by the email. So I'm going to share my email. Just a sec. Application Opera. So now you're looking at my Gmail account, tricksofchess@gmail.com. So here you see, you can find primary, social, promotion, and in promotion tab, you can find FIDE Master Viktor Neustroev, webinar reminder, and there was also, for example, this is the announcement, please. So don't forget to register, and probably next time the webinar will be conducted not here on Click Meetings, but through Twitch. Of course, there will be a restream to YouTube. As for my YouTube channel, just one more thing. Okay, so this is my chess.com account. So you see, I'm currently unable to comment anything. So I just want to find my group, Tricks of Chess. Yeah, Tricks of Chess. So this is our educational group. So this is where I will publish the announcements. So you can join it, and if so, you won't miss my webinar announcement. So next time the announcement will be only there, and it will be sent not by my account, but from my assistant's account, actually from Tricks of Chess. So what else? Or you can find it on email. So please join if you want to receive notifications or still on chess.com. Okay, so all the... Oh, looks like they disabled all my posts. It's a pity. Unfortunately, they did. And I think I'm unable to post news. Yeah, I didn't have any permission to post news. Okay, fine. So I don't understand why it happened. No, I understand why, but I don't think that it's fair, because I conduct the webinars for free. You can also find the streams of these webinars here on my YouTube channel. Please subscribe not to miss it. And So finally, my Twitch account. So the next webinar will be on Twitch, I think. So this is my Twitch account. Also, don't forget to subscribe, or just enter. Just enter next Sunday, same time. Okay, I think I'll just quickly answer your question, and then we'll continue with today's webinar, which is typical middle game positions. Okay. So first of all, who do we have today? Okay, Arnold is around 1500, Oliver from Indonesia 1300, Baj from Philippines 1700, Indrajit from India 2000 on chess.com, quite good. Tomasz 800 from Canada. Yeah, I understand that for many of you it's not spam, but some people don't want to learn chess, and that's why they consider it to be spam. They just want to play, have some fun, have some chess talkings. So it's a pity. However, before I started this announcement, I talked to the co-founder of chess.com, to Eric, and he gave me permission, but now I can't deal with it. I can't fix this problem anymore. So, okay, who else? We have Diane from United States with 1250. Francisco from United States below 800. Edward, what's your chess.com elo? Murat from United States 800. Yeah, guys, so just one more thing I want you to remember. Check promotions on your Gmail. This is how you won't miss any webinars. Okay, William, William, I'm glad you joined us. I contact them to fix, but they don't reply. Probably they have too many. Probably they have too many problems to solve. Okay, so once registered, you get emails or invitations to my future webinars. Okay, Oliver, since there are no webinars posted at chess.com, there are some webinars that are not yet posted there. So yeah, on YouTube, no, I don't want to post more webinars there. During the webinar, there will be a stream, but after that, I make it private. As for Twitch, the webinars will be available on YouTube as well. So Edward is 1860. So Michael about 1000, Alfred 1200, Dave 1500. Okay, and Sebastian 1500. Okay, fine, let's start. So today our topic is typical middle game positions, and we are going to analyze a few. No, as I mentioned it in my announcement, there are 3 ways to learn the openings. So for beginners, I kindly recommend to analyze the game together with the coach, because the coach can help you to find the proper plan, and also to teach you how to find the proper plan, what should be analyzed, what you should avoid, what actions from your opponent you should look at to realize what they want to do. So the coach can teach you. If not, then please ask him, and he will definitely do it. It's not so difficult for experienced players. above 2000. So second, you can learn typical plans like kingside attack, queenside attack, attack of the weaknesses, creating 2 weaknesses into the enemy camp. No, there are lots of them. I've mentioned it in my course, which is a course about how to find a game plan. I'm going to share just a sec. So here, how to make a game plan. And now if you apply a coupon code, you can save $10. So this is the link. If you want, join, and it's definitely helpful. I also recommend it to my students. So this is where you can learn typical plans. The other thing you can do, and this is what we are going to talk today, is to learn typical positions, typical pawn structures and the plans there. So that's why we start with the first game. It's the game between Vitaly Chechover against Nikolai Rumin, 2 Soviet players. In this position, White applied a plan with a minority attack. Okay, I'll show you. D4, E6, Knight F3, F5. This is Dutch defense. And one of the most solid strategies against Dutch defense is playing G3. Because, of course, we understand that with such a pawn formation, Black is going to attack us on the king side. And it's always better to locate the bishop on G2 to make the bishop protecting the king. So with fiancetta, usually the king is safer. You can remember it. And fiancetta even in different positions when you believe that you will be under the attack. Knight F6, bishop G2, bishop E7, castle, castle. C4, D5, one of the typical moves. D6 can be played as well. This is another strategy, but this is just a stone wall. Knight C3, C6, a typical stone wall, and where White fianchetted their bishop. Queen C2, helpful move. Queen E8. The idea of such a move is to get the queen to H5 to pressure with G5, G4, and maybe somehow attack H2. I played such a position against an international master 1 year ago. I lost that game, but it was a better position for me. I just didn't come up with a plan. So usually I don't like playing Stonewall, but in that game I had to, and I realized that if I do that, the position will be in my favor because my opponent already made a few tempo losses. So Queen C2 is just a typical move to connect the rooks and also to protect the pawn on C4 in some variations. What then? So here we definitely need to play with the bishop. In such a position, especially in Catalan system, where White also plays D4, C4, and then fianchettas the bishop, it's very often when White trades the bishop for a knight. Bishop F4 is another possible move, but in this game it was played bishop G5. Queen H5. No, bishop F6, bishop F6. A logical solution, maybe not the best option. I believe White could trade bishop for knight later, but here Vitaly Chechover just plays logically. C takes D5, E takes D5, and now we are faced with Carlsbad pawn structure. Usually we meet this position in Queen's Gambit with a different move order. The only difference that we have is two differences. So the pawn is not on F7 but on F5, and White decided to fiancetta the bishop, which they do quite rare. However, maybe you know what are the best plans against in Carlsbad pawn structure for white. Just any suggestions? Okay, so what do we have? A4. I don't understand what for, but okay. A4, minority attack, B4 by John, probably with the idea of minority attack, B4, B5, minority attack. Okay, that's right. Okay, guys, all of you are correct. E3 is not a good choice in this position. It's too slow. So there are three typical plans in Carlsbad system. To play E4 immediately. In this position, it's of course doesn't work because there are two pawns attacking it. To play F3, E4. Which is considered to be the strongest plan for white. And of course, minority attack. In this position, only minority attack is possible. E3, knight d7, E3 to secure the d4, and maybe for some other reason, maybe knight e2, knight e4 later, but of course, first the minority attack. We shouldn't lose tempers. B4 immediately. Look at the position of the enemy knight and bishop. So the knight should be here. So that's why black has to spend the tempo on replacing the bishop and moving the knight into the attack. Maybe not to g4, but to e4 and then g5, g4. This is the best plan. Another thing black can do if trying to succeed against minority attack is occupying these two squares. And it would be in black favor to have two knights rather than two bishops in such a position, because if black can occupy these two squares with their knights, then they can neutralize the minority attack. So b4, knight b6, with the idea of knight c4. b5, trying to create a weakness on c6. Queen goes back to support the position in general. a4, knight c4, a5. And this is where black decided to define the position. They played a6. This is a good move. If not this, then white's going to play a6. So a6, b takes c6, b takes c6. And we created a weakness on c6. This is our first achievement. We also have the b6 square. What do you think white should do? How to continue with the plan? Rook a b1. Okay, rook a b1 is definitely a possible move. I just don't want you to blunder the pawn on a5, so maybe rook f b1. Oh, so there was a good question. Why not bishop d7 in this position? Bishop d7 is a possible move. Why not? Yes, it can be played. But then a4, a5 anyway. But we are in this position. Exactly. Rook a b1. Yeah, of course, knight a3 comes. So rook f b1 should be played. So knight a4 c5 looks like a good plan, but I'm not sure if it's possible. Oh, yeah, it is. It is possible, but after this move, we should analyze bishop d8 with the idea of capturing on a5. So come on, guys. I think the plan is obvious. We should just get rid of this knight on c4. Knight d2. Let's trade pieces. So of course they take, because they don't want us to double the pawns, because then the pawn becomes a weakness. So knight e3 definitely doesn't work. There is no compensation. So knight d2, queen takes d2. So bishop d7, I believe, was a better option. It keeps the queen into the attack. But later, you'll realize that having the queen into the attack isn't so good. Okay, so chess base doesn't work well. And actually, maybe next time I'll be streaming using not chess base, but Lichess. So it will be easier. Okay. It's not working. Okay. Do you have any questions? I'll try to answer. While we are waiting. Oh, okay. So finally it works. So knight d2, knight takes d2, queen takes d2. Oh, so Valery joins us. Perfect. Why knight d2? Because we want to open the c file. Because our task is to attack the c6 pawn. With the knight standing on c4, we can do this. Well, okay, what's the question? Why not c4? So, I mean, knight e3 in this position, it takes e3, queen e3. Then we can play this move. Then bishop d4, for example, rook a3. White is winning. So knight d2, queen d2, rook a7 to activate the rook. Okay, so William asks how about the Tigran Petrosyan statements. Always save your forcing moves for the last. I think it works. Yeah, it works, but of course not often. It works mainly for beginners and maybe intermediate club players. So the idea is that you should, before you prepare a line, a certain combination, you should think Okay, you should prepare the forcing moves to the end, because this is how the probability that your opponent gonna blunder it are much higher, but not on grandmaster's level. So bishop g2 must become active, definitely. If black doesn't take the knight, then white takes. Here's c5. Okay, good question. So knight d2. What if c5 in this position? I think first I should take on d5. I take on d5 with a check, and then what then? So for example, bishop e6, bishop takes c4. White is winning. Okay, let's continue. So queen d2, rook a7 was played on the board, rook a b1. Now there is no need to protect on e5 because the queen is already on d2, and of course we need the other rook to stay on c1 to put the pressure here. King h8, kind of a prophylaxis. Probably they want to play c5 and they just don't want to get this intermediate check and the pawn blunder. Knight a4, now c5 is unavailable, but black continues with the attack. g5, knight c5, bishop d8. So now the queen has to stay on d2 to protect on a5. Knight d3, h5. So black tries to attack, which is a good idea because they have no other option. But in such a position that is going to be open soon, the attack is unlikely to succeed, only in case if white makes a mistake. So this looks like the only plan, but even this plan doesn't work because white already achieved a lot on the queen side. Rook fc1, and what are we threatening right now? Rook h7 was played. Knight e5 is not a strong threat. Knight e5, for example, rook f6, or maybe bishop d7 is enough. Yeah, bishop d5. So they blundered bishop d5. Was there a move to save the pawn? Let's check what else they could play. Bishop d7 leaves the rook out of the game. Then maybe just rook b8. Yeah, rook b8, for example. Rook b8 or knight e5, and white is much better. But I understand that maybe it's not a good idea of blundering the pawn. Maybe it was a sacrifice. So bishop they take with the pawn, rook c8, and they continue with the attack. But actually, after rook bb8, h takes g3, f takes g3 to protect the h2 pawn, black experienced a serious problem with the bishop hanging on d8, and they have to play this move. What do you think we should do? Yeah, it's time to play knight e5. In the game, it was played f4. But what if they try to save the rook by playing rook d6? What do you think? Rook takes b8, queen b4, takes the bishop, and then what? No. Knight f7, queen takes, the bishop is not hanging. So queen b4, right. And then if rook f6, how to play them? And knight g6, queen g6 is fine. In this position, knight g6 doesn't work. Just maybe rook takes g6 and that's it. No, what's the most? Oh, yes, Vincent, thank you. Your suggestion is the most simple in this position. Of course, there are several moves can be played, but queen takes d6 is the best option. And finally, extra knight. This is how white wins in case of rook d6. That's why black decides to make the position sharper by playing f4. E takes f4, g takes f4, knight d7, queen takes d7, and what's the final move of this game? What do you think? Yes, the final move is queen f4. If, for example, rook f4, just rook d8, and this endgame is absolutely winning. Sorry. Okay, let's go back. So of course we take the rook. Sorry. But in this position, they could block on f8 right now. In such a case, we take there, they take there, we take on d5, and this is completely winning position. Okay, that was a good question. What if instead of playing rook f6 in this position, just queen d7? Queen d7, knight d7. Probably you meant this move, but it's still queen d6, so maybe what? Rook takes. If rook takes, then we can capture the queen immediately. If this rook takes, then still same thing, and knight f7. Knight g6 works as well. Okay. So what do we have? Let's go back and try to sum it up. So this is a typical position that happens in Dutch defense. The only problem is that black lost a few tempers. They had to capture on f6 with the bishop. Now bishop and knight has to be relocated. So, and black is 2 tempers down. And in this position, black has a material advantage on the king side, and it's obvious that black is going to attack on the king side. What should white do? Usually, as I told you on one of my webinars, the best strategy against the king side attack is to open the position in the center. But in this position, it's impossible. The center is stable, and e4 doesn't work. That's why we should be looking for a counterplay. And here, counterplay is possible on the other side of the board with b4, b5, which finally forced black to retreat with the queen to protect the weaknesses that we created. After that, we open the files and enter the enemy camp. So what you may remember, a typical pawn structure, which is called Carlsbad pawn structure, and minority attack as a plan. This minority attack can be played in different positions as well, but definitely this is the plan to consider in Carlsbad pawn structure. So the second game we are going to analyze is the game between Alexander Bilavsky and Vladimir Bagirov. It was Karakan played there. E4, c6, d4, d5, knight c3. I'm sure you know all these lines, knight g3, bishop g6, h4. There are a lot of moves. h4 was played. h6, knight f3, if I'm not mistaken, is the main option, but h5 first. Bishop escapes, knight f3, knight d7, and then they play Bishop d3 to trade the bishops. Knight gf6. Bishop d2. Bishop f4 is another move. I believe it's even better than bishop d2, but not much. Queen c7. c4 was played in this position. e6. This is what just happens in almost any game in Caracan in the variation of knight c3. So queen e2, bishop d6, knight f5, with the idea to take the advantage of the pin. So what do you think we should do? Which move black to play? So castle, leaving the knight on d6, or leaving the bishop on d6 under the attack? What else? Bishop f8. No, bishop f8, it looks like a tempo loss. Bishop f4 is a good move in this position. Bishop f4, and if now he, well, let's say he takes, queen takes, knight g7 doesn't work. We just play king f8, the knight is trapped. But instead, black decided to let white capture on d6 and just castle. Queen d6, and bishop c3 was played in this position. What do you think, guys, about castle queenside in this position? How do you, what do you think? Is it a good or bad move for white? Good move. Oh, definitely a brave move. C file could be opened. How? C5 first, then B5. That makes sense, but C5, bishop C3, for example. Okay, B5 first. Any route is correct. B5. And if they decide to capture the pawn, then we definitely have a strong attack. Rook A B8. For example, queen B3 and E5. So then we are able to capture the pawn back, and we're definitely strong, have a strong position. If, for example, they play with the queen somewhere else, let's say E2, then we still have a strong attack. For example, we can deliver a check. I'm not sure. Maybe we can sacrifice the rook on B2. So we should definitely deliver this check. King goes to B1. And what do you think? Rook B2. is too risky. No, yeah, let's play queen a3. So if bishop c1, then knight d5, threatening with knight c3 and queen a2. It looks like this is the best option. So they play this move. Knight c3 gains the exchange. Maybe this move looks fine, because if they take... No, it's not good. Sorry. Yeah, just knight c3 is enough. So sacrificing the pawn in Caracan is on b5 is good if white castles to the queen side. So this is what you may remember and implement in your games if you play Caracan. If, for example, they don't accept it but play g4, initiating their attack, well, taking the pawn, I believe, is too risky. We'd better take on c4, g5, h takes g5, h6, for example. No, knight g5. Knight g5, just queen d5 is fine. So h6, g6, h7, and in this position we can just play f6 and save. So white attack is not faster than our. Of course, white understands it, and they played bishop c3. b5 anyway. C takes b5, c takes b5, queen takes b5, and knight d5. So black sacrificed the pawn with the idea to get the initiative, activate their knight to d5, and use the b and c files to attack enemy weaknesses, especially the b2 pawn and the c3. So once again, in this position, black tries to come up with a plan. They have knights, and they are trying to find good places for the knights. The bishop on c3 doesn't look good until the pawn on d4 is blocked. So what should be done? The pawn should stay there. For example, this move, if c5, the bishop becomes really bad, we can just retreat to f4, maybe to c7, to c7, then knight d5. Yeah, to c7. Then knight d5, then try to either e5 to undermine the pawn. So this is our plan, and then maybe this move to undermine the pawn, or just to activate the rooks first to prepare a5, b4 makes sense as well. This position is definitely in our favor, so they have to take. If they don't gain a pawn, then our piece is allocated better and our position is better. That's why white wants to have a compensation. Knight b6 looks good. Knight d5 was played. Knight e5. So we take on e5, then we take on c3. They have to take, and we're still down a pawn, but white has too many weaknesses in this position. Of course, you may say that knight e5 for white wasn't obligatory in this position. They could play something else, but which move? Let's say they castle. Then h5 becomes a weakness. So what do you think we can do? We can at least play this move. And if queen goes here or there, we play knight f4 and capture on h5. while the bishop is still bad. Queen goes somewhere else. Now then knight f4 still works, but let's first do this. Say rook c1. And then knight f4 is stronger because we also threaten the fork. So you see, with better pieces, we are able to get the pawn back, but keep our pieces activity. So that's why White decided to trade pieces to simplify, and then played rook h3. How would you continue in this position? Rook f d8. No, that's right. Rook f d8. Rook a b8 maybe as well. Now we are threatening with rook d5 at least. So that's why they retreat with the queen. Still rook d5 with the temper. Rook e3, protecting on e5. Maybe it was better to play f4, but if f4, how would you continue? Yeah, trying to attack two pawns simultaneously. Definitely we should play something like that. Then let's say rook e3, queen b6, rook c1, for example. Rook b5, trying to enter the second rank. And then the first. King escapes to g3, then we can double. So, and this is where we definitely are better because of our pieces activity. The rook on e3 is passive. The rook on b1 is not doing. The rook on b2 is not doing much. So king g4 to protect the pawn. So in this position, we are threatening with f5 and Passan and queen h5. So that's why rook h3. Rook d1, a4. And this is how the game could continue. And maybe it would be a draw. But it's White who has to defend their position. If White makes a mistake, Black succeeds. Okay, let's go back to the moment where f4 was played. So f4 was probably a better move here after rook d5, but they played rook e3. Oh, Michael, what was the question? Why did you ask me to go back? To which moment? Several moves into variation. Okay. Let's say here. When you have the rook on d, okay, here. So, and what was your question? What do you think we can do? White rook on b2. Okay, well, queen c5, or maybe you can suggest anything else. What if they play this move? Well, I think rook d2 is enough. No, rook d2, for example, and queen f3, rook a2. So this is a weak move. I don't like the idea of queen e3. So queen e3, queen takes e3, then maybe one of the rooks to d3, then king f2. And what did you achieve? Maybe not this, but this move. King f3 is better. So rook takes, king takes, and what? Yes, the pawns are weaknesses, but white already has the rook on the 7th rank. Okay, so rook e3 was played instead, after which black definitely took. Of course, if rook e5, then queen c3, the other rook is hanging. So after rook e5, white had to play this move. Rook takes e3, queen takes e3, and we activate our other rook. One of the ideas is to play queen h2 in this position. That's why king to g1. How would you play them? Queen a5, what for? I think rook d5 is good. This is what was played in the game. So they have to protect. Rook f5. Queen a8 was played in the game, but maybe they would find a better move. So actually, looks like no, because they have to protect both pawns simultaneously. So that's why check is the best. And then queen e4, threatening with g4. How would you play in this position? Yeah, you can take on c3. So rook d1, and then queen c5 attacking on f2. And if now g4, how would you play? Queen takes f2, king h1, and then? Yeah, queen f3 trading the queens. And black is winning. So instead, after queen c5 to defend the f2 square, they played a rook d4 move. But queen c1, king h2. Now queen g5. Attacking the h5 pawn. g4 doesn't work. If g4, we can still play queen h4, queen f2, and queen f3. So that's why king g1. And now we take. If now g4 in this position, then just queen g6 with the idea to unpin on the next move. That's why after queen h5, rook d7 was played, the last chance to show the activity. But a5, f3, threatening with g4, just queen g6 to unpin king f2. And after rook g5, they resigned. The white is 2 pawns down, and they have to trade the queens, otherwise black captures on g2. So let's go back and try to analyze the plan. This is the key moment of the game. this is the pawn structure that you can meet, for example, in Scandinavian defense, but it's more common for Caro-Kann. In such a case, please analyze b5, sacrificing the pawn. If your opponent plays c4, c5, they give up the control over the d5 square, and you can occupy the square with the knight. If they capture, then you are likely to have the initiative as a compensation for the pawn sacrifice. If not, if something else, then at least you open the b file. Or maybe you can push b4. Depends on the concrete threat. What then? After trading all minor pieces, Black realized that his pieces are located better, and they can attack white weaknesses such as c3, e5, and h5. And that actually was the key factor for success. Okay, so any questions about this game? Because I'm going to show another one. And then game from middle. So is there a middle game from English opening? No, of course there are, but not in this webinar. The game between Tigran Petrosyan and Vlastimil Hort. Tigran was playing with white pieces. He played c4, but it wasn't English opening. G6. Okay, there is a good question about important tips of the middle game. So, guys, there are several things I can suggest. So, first, two basic things that you should remember. What are they? If you don't know which plan to apply, just look at your pieces, try to find the worst one, and improve it. Second thing, think about your opponent's plan, and if you think it's dangerous, try to disrupt it. What are the tips? You should play on the side where you have a material advantage. For example, if you have a material advantage on the king side, you may start the king side attack. If your opponent has a material majority on that side, then you shouldn't play there, only as a defense. If your opponent attacks you on the flank, try to counterattack in the center by opening the position, because after opening the position, you can trade pieces through the center. You can get a counterplay through the center and just move your pieces to defend your king through the center. It's much easier. No, actually, the plan depends on the pawn structure. One more thing, of course, you know the principle that Neustroev first announced. He told that if so that we need to create a weakness on one side of the board and tie enemy pieces to the protection of this weakness, and then to focus and then create a weakness on the other side of the board, so that the opponent has not enough space to move the pieces quickly and protect both weaknesses. Anirudh, this is a weird question. How can you have a material advantage on the same side of your opponent? No. You should compare how many pieces you have there, how many he has. One of you only have a material advantage, or none of you. Okay, so Tigran Petrosyan against Vlastimil Hort, c4, g6, d4, knight f6. Knight c3 is a more common move, but after knight c3, I believe Tigran decided to avoid Grunfeld defense. That's why he played d5 right now. Too early without development, and for example, Black can try this gambit. which I think makes sense because white is not developed at all. But they just played bishop g7, knight c3, d6, d3, and here c5 is probably one of the best options. But instead e5 was played. That's fine. So finally we met the position which is quite familiar for King's Indian. If, for example, in this position, like a5 with knight a6, or maybe just knight d7, then this is King's Indian. e4, castle, and so on. But black decided to play c5. What do you think? Should we capture in Pasan or not? What's your opinion? No, it makes d6 a weakness. If we were developed better, I would say definitely yes. But in this position, after d takes c6, they capture with the knight, of course. Let's say castle, bishop e6, then, for example, b3 to protect, they can just play e4. And if knight g5, then just bishop f5 or d5. So in this position, we can't take the advantage of the weakness of d6 because we were undeveloped. And actually, when the position is closed, development is not so important. It doesn't mean that you should just close the position and forget about your development, but it means that you can't take the advantage of your better development when the position is closed, and that's why you should open it. Castle, knight bd7. This is what was played in the game. So knight bd7 is a possible move, but I believe a better option was this, with the idea of playing f5. But okay, so e4, f5. Oh wait, not on this line. Knight bd7 was played on the board in the game. Then e4 and knight e8 here is a good move, maybe the most popular, even with the idea of f7, f5. This is how black tries to fight for the initiative and try to get more control over the center. Actually, guys, so why knight e8 and f5? What do you think? Why it's a common plan for black? I believe Anirudh knows why, because he plays this position as he plays typical position for white. No, the idea of black in King's Indian is to attack on the king side. White tries to attack on the queen side. Sometimes white can counter attack on the king side, especially if white needs to defend their position. So typically here, what this move, then let's say bishop d2, a6, a4, b6. Then our task is to play b4 finally. So now maybe this is not a good example. So knight e8. Let's say we play what? a3. And if they play f5, we can play b4. We are playing there, they are playing in the center. This is the most common strategy for King's Indian. So the general goal of black is to succeed on the king side, deliver a checkmate, but in this position, white dominates. White controls the center, so white is slightly better. That's why white can stop it. H6. This is what was played in the game. Bishop d2, knight e8 now. Queen e2. Prophylaxis to connect the rooks, to get probably the other rook to b1, the f rook to b1. King h7. Why king h7? Why not f5? What do you think? Knight h4, I agree with you. Knight h4, and if, for example, king h7 in this position, we can capture and play queen h5 with the idea just to gain the pawn. And if queen f6 in this position, what do you think we can do? Looks like black tried to protect the pawn, but actually they didn't. Yes, you're absolutely right. Well, bishop g5 doesn't make much sense here, just queen f7 after that. But knight f5 makes. If queen takes, then bishop e4. If, let's say, something like that, we can check and then take on f5 with the knight. So that's why in this position, king h7 is not good. Maybe queen f6 is the other option. But if queen f6, what do you think we can do? Take the pawn on f5 and then what? Then we can initiate a kingside attack with pawn marching queen play. So we can play f4 right now. This is a very typical maneuver. If black tries to attack us on the side, we can face them with f4. We can take on f5 and then play f4, or we can play f4 immediately, which I think is better. For example, e takes f4, e takes f5. If they take there, we capture on g6 with the knight, and this is a winning position. At least they have to sacrifice the rook or this knight. And if they take there, then rook f4, threatening to take on f5 on the next move. Knight e5, let's just put more pressure. And now white is playing on the king side. Why? Because white has their material advantage, because two rooks are already there. So f5 is faced with knight h4 and f4. That's why king h7 to some prophylaxis to play f5 on the next move. a4, b6. No, f5 is possible in this position, but they decided to play b6 first. a5, rook b8. A takes b6, queen takes b6. Attacking on b2. Rook f b1, that's why. a6. So our bishop is bad. We should somehow improve it. What can you suggest? Which plan to follow in this position? So John suggests bishop h3. Okay, what else? So bishop h3, knight h4. Okay, take the king side now. b4. b4 is too early. Now it's still a blunder. So we can play bishop h3. Yeah, that's definitely a good move. Queen b7. This is how they vacate the b6 square for the knight. What do you think we should do now? So you want to play on the, but wait a sec. So here we have rooks and knight on the, actually, what do we have? These, and these pieces on the queen side. What do they have? Only these two. So we have the majority there on the queen side. And the idea of playing b4 looks really good. That's why in this position, knight d1 and not knight f1, because with such a move, even if we play f4, we only open the bishop. We are unable to succeed with such a strong attack because he has two knights. He has two knights plus several pieces defending the king. But we already moved the rooks to that side. That's why we should play on the queen side. So knight d1, knight b6, bishop c8, and queen takes c8. Our bishop was bad. And knight h4. We don't play b4 because our pawn on c4 could become a weakness. Knight c7, knight e3, just to improve the knight. And after he goes to h3, what do you think we can do? Queen g4 to trade the queens, but what for? What's the goal? Actually, if you do that, if you trade the queens there, then you can blunder on c4. I believe knight g4 doesn't look good because still knight c4 can be played. No, these moves don't work. Okay, any other suggestions of what can be done? Black just moved the queen to the king side, what means that we have the majority on the queen side and we should open the position there, b4. Knight d7 to take on c5 with the knight and advance the pawn forward to create a passed pawn. A takes b5. Here we can definitely take, but rook a7 looks like a better option. If they play this move, which was a better option, then after c takes b5, we can just promote the pawn. But instead, they played a rook c8 and faced with material losses. Bishop a5 and knight b6 was played on the board. C takes b5, queen retreats. How would you play in this position? What do you think? Knight c4. No, knight c4 cannot be played right now. Guys, you are mistaken about knight c4. So let me show you. Knight c4, knight takes c4, queen takes c4, rook b5, and what? You can take on c7. I'll capture on b1. If you take on b1, I'll capture with my queen, and the knight is not hanging. The best thing you can do is to trade the queens and then capture on f7. But this is where black activity is better. This is where black is winning. So in this position, after queen b7, you should play prophylaxis, after which the rook on b1 is not hanging with a check. So we are going to capture on b6, play knight c4 immediately, or capture and then play. So c4 was played by black, bishop b6, rook takes b6, knight c4, and after they capture on b5, they lose the material. What do you think? Which move can we play? No, you can't capture on b5 and then take on d6 because your knight will be pinned. Knight takes e5. Yeah, maybe knight e5, but there is a better move. Wait, no, knight e5, bishop e5, and what then? Knight b6, Dave. Yes, you are exactly correct. So a fork. They can't capture on b1. The king is already on g2. It's not a check. That's why they give up the exchange, and then the position is completely winning. They played a few more moves, and finally black realized that they can protect on d6. They're totally pinned and resigned. So let's go back and try to sum it up. This is a closed center. We understand that while black is going to play f5 and attack on the king side, especially if they have the material majority there. What should we do? We may play on the queen side or meet him with knight h4, f4. In some variations, it works. In the game, it didn't happen, but it was supposed in several lines. Instead, we opened the position on the queen side and finally played b4. After, and of course, we got rid of the bad bishop. So we played b4 after the opponent get the queen out from the queen side. And then we had a clear plan to create a pass pawn. Here, instead of taking with the c pawn, we could apply a tactical strike and gain the material. Instead of knight d1, what if knight a4? It was possible. Okay, this is good. But in some variations, knight d1, knight a3 stops f5. Okay, guys, thank you for attending my webinars. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask them. So next time the webinar will be on Twitch. This is my Twitch account. You can subscribe. But there also will be a stream on YouTube. I'm going to restream on YouTube. So for those who won't be able to join Twitch, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. You can find it there. If you have any questions, you may send me an email at tricksofchess@gmail.com. You can also suggest topics for the new webinars. Thank you and see you next Sunday.